Well, so I've just come across this within the last 10, 15 minutes or so, and I've read maybe a couple of pages down in order to get a feel for who was involved and all the rest of it. You would never believe that this is actually a task force that was set up in Scotland, and it includes the SNP's Fiona Hislop. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure if I've seen this before. It does not appear familiar, and I've seen many a publication and many an article over the course of the past few years, because that's how I ended up coming across it. I was actually trying to make another video where I elaborated on comments that I'd left on a video that I made yesterday, where I was talking about maybe not necessarily an citizens assembly to talk about what we should be doing regarding our demography decline, but at the very bare minimum some form of a national conversation, because I do think that by and large a lot of the silence that surrounds this topic is because people just don't really seem to understand the long-term consequences of what's being suggested. You know, relying solely on immigration for population control, population increase, or to rectify a decline in the population. Simplistic mathematics, it would suggest that us as a people will cease to exist at some point in the future. That should be ringing alarm bells for people, and the fact that it doesn't, you have to wonder why. And I think one way to find out why would be to have some form of national conversation, at least, you know, you have to try, or at least that's what I was trying to get at. The other comment that I'd left was that there's only one narrative and consensus that dominates any talk of the future, but Scotland's demography is declining, and it will be immigration that reverses it. Think a public conversation at the bare minimum needs to be had. If I had a list of options to try and ease or rectify the demography projected decline, immigration would be right at the bottom, hesitantly, and only to be considered if everything else failed. But our government isn't, nor has it ever tried anything else, nor have we heard them speak about it. Well, I stand to a certain extent corrected, because as it transpires, they have spoke about it. To what capacity, I don't know yet. I haven't read through it. But this is their first national population strategy framing the diverse and cross-cutting demographic challenges that Scotland faces at national and local level, and setting out a programme of work to address these challenges and harness new opportunities. And this came out in 2021, published 15th of March 2021. I really, this has to be the first I've heard of it. You know, I had a wee look on my channels and there's nothing there about this, so I'll hold my reservations to the end. I'm not going to read through every paragraph, because I want to make this video a decent size in terms of like watchable, so people ain't going to turn it off. Because if this turns out to be of any worth, then hopefully it'll be a bit of worth to yourself as well. But I still think that the initial point, my initial idea for my video, that a national sort of conversation, ideally, how that would ever come to the fruition, I don't know, but I think the conversation needs to be had anyway, like with people around you in your circles, your family, your friends, your work, whatever. You know, it should be a controversial conversation to have, to talk about the future. Are you happy with the future? Are you happy with how things would turn out if this continues, etc.? You know, these are normal things that should be discussed. And it just fucking really irritates me that there's just this deafening silence, and has been for some time, apart from a never-ending whisper in the wind of thin lips every single year, literally every year since at least 2017 that I'm familiar with, coming out, crying and whining, demanding immigration powers. Why? Because we need them for our demography decline. So, which is replacement migration, in other words, but that's still brandished as a conspiratorial talking point, apparently. But anyway, so here's it here. Let's see what happens, eh? Fiona Hislop, a woman I have to admit I cannot stand. When she talks about climate change, it makes me want a book. I wish these people would stop talking about climate change when they're politicians, not climatologists. You know, they're probably just as credible. They have about as much credibility as I do when it comes to talking about these matters, but, you know, I'm not in a position of power as she is. That's what makes it fucking worse. But anyway, so it starts off with her talking about, or them talking about, the population has shaped Scotland's history, as for many years the nation was a nation of out migration, with people leaving to build a future elsewhere, right? Today, across our cities, towns and villages, countryside and island areas, our population now stands at a record high of 5.46 million. This record high is the result of a period of steady population growth from the beginning of the 21st century, and it was mainly, by and large, European immigration. But don't let that get twisted, because the last census, obviously, it was about 87% identified themselves as white Scottish realistically, but you know, that's how it's worded. So there's still a reasonably decent sized stock of us left, but nonetheless, I don't really think I'm going to be seeing any acknowledgement that we are Scottish in this. There's going to be no acknowledgement of that. That would be asking for too much, I think, you know, because at the end of the day, we are still expendable to these people. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality of the matter. If they can quite easily advocate for you to be replaced by people from anywhere in the world, whether it be Poland or whether that be Gambia, the fact of the matter is that they were quite content with them coming here to have children on your behalf, thus meaning they don't really give a shit whether or not you exist as a person and by extension as a people. And I've always found that a difficult concept to grasp when these people are of the same stock as us themselves, but obviously wired differently. But anyway, I'm rambling. Let's try and get into this a bit. I don't want this video being anywhere near the length of the last one, that's for sure. So it says here that populations are not fixed things. They ebb, flow and ultimately change over time, presenting each generation with new opportunities and challenges. And while the population of Scotland as a whole has grown and is projected to grow into the 2020s and 30s, this masks a set of real and very significant demographic challenges that face Scotland for the future. And you've got to also bear in mind as well, when they talk about the projected growth, that's all via immigration. So yeah, I point to this national conversation. I don't think that's acceptable at all. And before this publication ever came into existence, the talking point was always that that projections showcased that all of our population growth will come via immigration, and they actually had the audacity to start using that as justification to call for devolved immigration powers. So they had computer modelling tell everybody that all our population growth was going to come from people elsewhere. So they needed devolved immigration powers in order to prove the projections right. In other words, if they didn't get devolved immigration power, which they didn't, that would mean that the projections via the computer were actually incorrect. It's very bizarre. They were hell-bent on trying to prove the projections to be correct. You get what I'm trying to say. It's just fucking ludicrous. The computer says that's where it's coming from, so we need to do it that way. Nah. But that's the people that have been in charge for some time now in this country, at least on paper. Scotland's population is ageing, just like most advanced economies around the world. We are living longer, and that is to be celebrated, yet at the same time we're having less babies. This means that by the 2050s, the number of elderly people are expected to have risen dramatically as a proportion to the population. And Scotland's relationship with migration is a key factor, a key driver, of labour market stability, is anticipated as a change as the result of Brexit. Alongside demographic processes, mortality, fertility and migration, this all adds up to fundamental challenges facing key aspects of our society over the next 10, 20 to 50 years, including the economy, public services and the environment. Okay. COVID gets a wee mention here. I'm not going to delve into that paragraph too much, but then it says here that the paper itself frames Scotland's demographic challenge around 4 key building blocks: family-friendly nation, a healthy living society, an attractive and welcoming country, and a more balanced population. Okay. It frames the complex and cross-cutting issues of population change, connecting existing actions around economic and infrastructure development, local investment, planning, migration, housing, etc. Using these building blocks, it also begins to open up opportunities for innovation, adaptation and greater strategic focus, which will enable Scotland to harness demographic opportunities and meet the needs of our people as its population changes over time. Okay. This is a national challenge and will require a national response across the government, local government and partners to ensure a thriving, fucking sustainable, of course. Sustainable. That's a red flag in and of itself when they bring up sustainable or sustainability in a document talking about population, because sustainable development wants a depopulated world by and large. We must recognise, though, that Scotland can only do so much with the powers it has. Within this document, we set our actions we propose to take at local and national level, recognising that the UK government either needs to make changes or to give further power to the government and partners to deliver the changes that Scotland will need. I assume that means devolved immigration powers. The challenges that we face have developed over decades, and they've known for decades, not saying Fiona Hislop has known for decades, but it's been known for decades that this was an issue. These projections that they talk about that will showcase population growth in the 2020s and the 2030s, where were the projections that would have showcased today at present if things weren't changed back then? They did fuck all back then. They did absolutely nothing, and here we are. So at what point are we going to start to do things? There's nothing to suggest that if we put things into motion it would all work, but this time, 20, 30 years from now, there'd be a whole new generation of little Scots running about. But the fact of the matter is, until you attempt it, you can't say that it can't be done. Just because it has failed elsewhere doesn't mean it would fail here, and I just think it's a cop-out to just brush all that to the side, ignore it, and pretend that these possibilities, these opportunities, these fixes can't be tried, and instead focus solely on immigration, because all that is doing is adding to the problem that is us as a people beginning to dissipate, disappear, die off, become extinct. Might sound dramatic, but what other ways would you fucking word it? You know? I know there's an element of the onus being on us, it's incumbent on us to repopulate. But there's a lot of other things at play here, things that I don't think this document will even dare touch upon, and that is that they are at fault, by and large themselves. The policies they've pushed, the society that they have created, continue to create. You know? They spend, especially in the present day right now, they spend more time talking about gender inequality and feminism, and they're hell-bent on getting the girls into STEM and getting the girls into the best paying jobs, etc., etc. You know the shit, you know. Motherhood, let's not even talk about that. No, don't even want to emphasise that there's nothing wrong with motherhood. There's nothing wrong with the traditional family. There's nothing wrong with any of that at all. No, they want women to think only about careers, and that's part of the reason, by and large, I would argue, to why you see this as such a problem now. But they're never going to hold their hands up and say that they're partly to blame. The feminists will never admit that they're wrong. No. In 2019, the government established a ministerial population task force to consider Scotland's future population challenges, with the task force being chaired by Economy, Fair Work and Culture Secretary. Culture, and brings together ministers, from across the government to deliver a coherent focus on the interventions which are needed to address the population challenges. This paper will set out the complex and multi-dimensional demographic challenge before us. Right, okay. Enough introductions and let's get into it, because Jesus Christ, man. It first tells the story of Scotland's population, the journey that brought us to this stage, and further population projections. Well, I'm getting fucking sick of projections. We need to move away from this idea of projections, because all these projections are doing is giving you answers to what you've put into a computer yourself. So, if we can stop talking about relying on immigration, then you're not going to get projections that are showcasing immigration as the future. That's your plan Z, not your fucking plan A. Well, that's what it should be, if this was really about, reinvigorating us as a people in our birth rate situation. And again, these are the sort of things I'd love to see being talked about in this hypothetical national conversation I brought up at the beginning. But again, it mentions a family-friendly nation, healthy society, and attractive, welcoming country, etc. We connect together the major and ambitious actions we are already developing and delivering, which address Scotland's demographic issues. Okay, no more introductions. Well, that's a great headline, isn't it? Sustainability. So what we got family. They want Scotland to be the best place to raise a family. I have heard the SNP use that turn of phrase before. Health. Scotland's population is healthy, active, and able to live longer, healthier lives. Attraction. Scotland is able to attract people with the skills to make a positive contribution to our economy, communities, and public service. Now, again, I said this in the video last night that I made. Like this constant talk of contributions, that's fine for these people that have conjured up this document. But for me personally, I think that the constant talk of GDP and contributions to society, etc., that they are secondary when we're talking about the future existence of our own people. You know, a contribution from a foreigner plays second fiddle in that respect. No offence to him or her. And then they want Scotland's population to be balanced and distributed across the country, because obviously the islands, certain parts of Scotland, are a lot less populated than other parts. That's why you see that programme the government put together to try and encourage people to move to, I think it was Skye, or the islands anyway. Which is good if you can encourage Scots there, but you know, you always have a bit of fear that they'll encourage people from further afield. Delivering this vision will require an agile whole system and sustained government response, and I'm starting to get real red flags here, like sustained again, and this is all sustainable development bullshit. We have a globally competitive, entrepreneurial, inclusive and sustainable economy. Yeah, I'm going, I'm getting red flags now. Is this taking a turn? It might very well be. The National Performance Framework, which is Sustainable Development Goals, by the way, essentially, belongs to the whole of Scotland, recognising the government on its own cannot deliver these broad societal outcomes, and it requires the public sector, businesses, etc., to take this forward. It promotes partnership working by making organisations jointly responsible for planning and spending to achieve shared outcomes. Fucking hell, man. I just find that peculiar that this would even be discussed in a document about rejuvenating our population, allegedly. Population and demography are at the heart of the National Performance Framework. Is that right? The core purpose is to create a more successful country with opportunities for all of Scotland to flourish through increased well-being and sustainable and inclusive... Oh, Jesus. We're really getting red flags now. In addition, due to the scale, breadth and complexity of our demographic challenge, our approach is and must continue to be a deeply collaborative one. Together, our population programme brings together national and local government partner and organisations, as well as academics, government analysts and the National Records of Scotland, committed to widening and extending our engagement to bring together all of those with an interest in this crucial issue. Right, okay. Taking a place-based approach to demography, which apparently means place must be at the centre of the answer to our demographic challenge. The economy, housing, infrastructure, etc. are all driven by taking a place-based whole system approach. Okay, right. Let's see. We also recognise that urgent action is needed now to help our communities. Within this paper, we have identified a number of actions that we commit to act upon. Right, okay, and they include immigration, probably. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck me. Presumably that's, well, one of the ones I read out. I thought it was below, but there's nothing below that would suggest it's that. Attracting people and business to Scotland. Inward migration is currently the sole reason for Scotland's population growth, and is projected to be so in years to come. That's not good at all. I'd rather it shrunk than rely on that solely, because in time that still upsets the balance, if you will. It tips the scales eventually. We must ensure that growth is not impacted by the UK government's new immigration system. We commit to continuing to push our migration system that works for Scotland, developing evidence-based, deliverable policy proposals, working in partnership to deliver solutions. In addition to seeking to attract people from the EU and internationally, of course, BAMS, we will also continue to attract those from elsewhere in the UK who may wish to make Scotland home. And why have these people never ever tried to make any calls to the diaspora out there, the Scottish diaspora? I mean, there is a lot of them. I'm not saying a lot would want to come here, but you could write it off the list. Never once seen them say that, but that's always an idea that I've had. You know, you've got to try things. But I just know that if you give the SNP the ability to control immigration, and this country is done for, and that's another matter in and of itself. That fucking terrifies me. The only thing the irony of the SNP's existence is the only thing that is saving Scotland, demographically speaking, is the union itself. Because without the union, and Scotland was in the hands, completely firmly, of Sturgeon's hands, or the SNP's hands. That's it. We're fucked. But as things stand, most immigrants go to England, the ones that want to come to the UK. They prefer England for some reason. And yeah, long may that continue, no offence. Building a programme of engagement. Is It's just the start of the programme, and you spent a hell of a lot of time introducing yourself, by the way. We commit to engaging with all parts of Scottish society, from private sector to the third sector, academic institutions to public blah 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 blah, right? That's nice, riveting. The full list of actions we commit to can be found on page 85. Right. Well, there's an element. Alright, okay, I'm going to pause and see what this says. The first action, it talks about a gender pay gap action plan. Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, even the feminist nonsense slips into this PDF, does it? You know, this is family friendly, apparently. Okay. But I feel like I might be missing a lot by skipping all the way down here. But I'll see. Action 2. They commit to building more affordable homes as well as shared equity schemes for those who really need to buy a home. Collaborative brands, Scotland, marketing communication strategy to promote Scotland as a family-friendly nation and promote resources such as Parent Club to help attract talent to our country. Again, that to me is a red flag. This is secondary. You should be trying to focus on encouraging your own to have the children, not encourage people to come here and have children on their behalf. So I would have to rule that one out. But again, the SNP are the people that are behind this publication in question. They didn't set out, from what I can tell, to try and get native Scots to start having children again. They didn't come out to try and find a way to ensure that the native Scottish population didn't die off. They're just trying to find a way to ensure there's enough people to keep that sweet, sweet GDP flowing. We call on the UK government to make changes to employment law to pursue a gender-blind parental leave. We will explore offering fertility services to all those within society who wish to raise a family but do not have the means to do so. Fair enough, that's a fair enough thing, but then you've fucked that up, haven't you now, with your coercion via the jib jab. We will explore opportunities to ensure breastfeeding breaks are available to all new mothers in the workplace. Oh, I'm sure that will encourage women to get pregnant, knowing that they can get their boobies out. And okay. Healthy living. We will continue to invest in improving population health and reducing health inequalities to ensure that people are supported to live longer, healthier lives. Don't see what relevancy that bears to children. We must consider the changing nature of demand of an elderly population and adjust our healthcare provision accordingly. Right, okay, this is going off on a tangent that I'll have to come back to at a later date. I'm going to go back up and see what else is said. Just taking the fucking piss now, innit? For fuck's sake, come on. Alright. Wow. Now, they lay claim here saying that demography and population change is crucial to Scotland's future. So it'll be interesting to see what they mean by that. But I wouldn't get your hopes up, because my hopes are starting to dwindle on this publication. Not that I hope for much to begin with, was just more surprised than anything to see something like this. Shocked even, because I'd never heard of it. Anyway, we have set out our plans for opening up more conversations about Scotland's changing population and continue to develop our evidence base. Well, it's funny that they say that, because I've not heard any conversations to date. So I don't know if these conversations that are mentioned there are yet to be had, or if they have been had in some capacity, maybe in some committee or something, that never really got much attention in the media, which wouldn't surprise me. But one thing's abundantly clear. This isn't a nationwide conversation. I just find it bizarre that, like, people like us, like, unless I'm the only one that hasn't seen this, but I'm gonna say people like us are last to hear something like this. Anyway, demography shows us the structure of our population. Yeah, whatever. The National Performance Framework sets out the sort of country we want to see, and at its heart is our purpose to create a more successful country with opportunities for all Scotland to flourish through increased well-being and sustainable and inclusive growth. Yeah, that again is an absolute red flag. The National Performance Framework, which again is a set of goals, essentially targets, national targets that the country is aiming to achieve them all at the one time. That's the sort of trajectory that Scotland's on. Sounds great, but realistically all it is the Sustainable Development Goals renamed. So if they're referring to that and saying that that sets out what sort of country we want to see, then there's no way in fuck that these people, or this publication, is going to come up with any conclusions that are going to have any benefit in the future in terms of at the very least, halting the declining birth rates. Not happening at all. There is no a chance that is happening. Too long in the tooth for everything sustainable these days to know that to be a fact. So, I didn't realise it would be so ingrained with mentioning them so often. To achieve that vision, to meet our targets to address the global climate, which Oh, for fuck's sake. Today's educational attainment and to build the necessary skills and infrastructure Scotland needs to create a fairer, greener and wealthier country. We're talking about demographic decline, but you got to keep shoving in there that fairer, greener, wealthier country. That fundamentally goes back to what I was on about earlier on. These are part of the problem, things like that. Focusing on shit like that. Progressivism is the problem. Liberalism is the problem. And as we move further and further into the hellscape that is the climate emergency, etc. I don't see very much being done in the way of rectifying birth rate issues when that's all said and done. Fucking honestly, in an ideal world, I would cut all ties to the United Nations and the WHO and that. I would tell them to go fuck themselves. I would just, shut the country away from their input. But that's not going to happen. You have to make do with what you got, And fundamentally, we still got a relatively sized amount of stock. We got the numbers essentially, but it's just not the same anymore, is it? Really, it's people are more self-centered, individualistic. They don't really look to the long term for more reasons than one. And these are all things that are partly drummed into them. Conditioning, social conditioning, generational. And again, the people that are behind this publication may not necessarily per se be behind it, in terms of being responsible themselves, but it's their progressive ideology, their feminist shit, that is to blame, by and large. Fiscal impacts of changes to population growth. The official independent economic and fiscal forecaster, whose forecast directly informed the government's budget, has stated that the size of the working age population is very important for Scotland's future economy and public finances. Alright, okay. Well, yes. Yes, yeah. I think I know where this is going. Published their economic and fiscal report in 2019, setting out the 5-year forecast of the Scottish economy, tax receipt, etc. Their comments about the importance of population growth highlight the impact of demography on our economy. We expect growth in Scottish GDP to be significantly lower than the UK, primarily because of slower population growth in Scotland. Or it could be argued because one of the things that Nicola Finlips has been saying for some time is Scotland intends to move away from the concept of GDP in favour of a well-being economy. But I would probably hazard a guess it would have something to do with immigration as well. I'd see that's a fucking good thing, to be honest. But, Miss Laura, but that's just me. I just don't agree with the concept of people coming to this country and they claim it's to contribute and they're seeking a better life. Oh, well, that's good for you, Paul. But the reason that you've been imported here is because they see you as a baby maker, whereas I am not, apparently. So you're here to replace me. That's that, and I fundamentally will never agree with that concept. Call me a fucking racist if you're going to, where am I, shorty? The latest economic and fiscal forecasts were published in January 2021, including new population forecasts. These show the indirect impact of the coup and the ending of free movement by projecting the population of Scotland aged between 16 and 64 to be smaller by around 14,000 compared with their February 2020 forecast. New population projections lower trend GDP relative to the projections used in February by 0.5% in 2025 and have been revised mostly due to lower anticipated net migration to Scotland as a result of the pandemic rather than excess deaths. Okay. The fiscal framework agreed between the government and the UK government insulates the Scottish budget from differences in overall population growth in respect of both tax revenues and social security expenditure. Okay. Right. However, this does not protect the Scottish budget from all demographic change. The budget is not protected from a reduction in the proportion of the population accounted for by working age people, and a consequent reduction in tax revenues per head of increase in social security spent per head. I mean, this is fucking irrelevant. Who cares? Fuck's sake. Half an hour in, and I fucking got good, is it, man? I'm only on page 12. Here we go with this shit again. No. It's just impossible to cover this as quickly as I once did. Beyond the importance to government finances and the ability of the public sector to provide services to its population, Scotland's population is a driver of overall economic activity and growth. Well, that contradicts what's just been said, but however, Scotland's business base and domestic customers that provide them with demand and the workforce required to supply that demand are all derived from its resident population. How Scotland's population is changing is fundamental to the current and future health. Right, okay, well, right, so in recognition of this, monitoring population growth is a set above a component outcome of the National Performance Framework, and ensuring Scotland has a well-skilled, productive, healthy, and resilient population is an active action identified in the economic strategy as a requirement to achieve sustainable growth. Okay. So this could really shite. No one needs to know. I don't care anyway. More COVID stuff. Right, okay. Don't know what happened there. Another BAME, of course, though. A lot of BAMEs in this, isn't it? A Down syndrome white girl and a BAME again. Sustainable again. Yeah. I think I'm not far off the mark. So, fuck's sake. I'm not seeing very much in the way of suggestions here, though. I thought there would be a bit more than this. I just feel like I'm reading fucking paragraphs of waffle. Oh, man. As in many economies, there is also a persistent inequality in our labour market based upon gender, age, disability, ethnicity, and geography. I mean, what the fuck has this got to do? Well, let me see. Progress has been made against some of these inequalities. For example, sustained growth of female participation in Scotland's labour market, with Scotland's female employment rate rising. And there you go. There's one answer as to why there's a decline in births in Scotland, because there's been a consistent theme to ensure that that number keeps going up for the women working in the labour market. But I think there might be a bit of a blind spot there for the feminists that have conjured this up. And if you're working for the SNP, by God, you're a feminist, yes. But like, they just can't see the wood for the trees, you know. What? They can't understand. They can't fathom the fact that there's a decline in the population. They don't know what it is. And then in the next breath, they're celebrating the fact that, or at the very least, they're alluding to the fact that there's more women in the workforce now, and then that percentage point just keeps going up and up and up. Why? Because all the focus these days is getting women empowered, etc., etc., and there's nothing at all about encouragement or incentivizing, or at the very least normalizing the concept. You know, settling down, strive for family-orientated goals, etc. The ways of old, traditionalism, if you will. Can't do that, though. No, because that breaches the rules of empowerment. And this is heavy COVID shit here, like, but I don't really need to go into that, really. Having a sustainable and growing working age population is important, and this is measured by the dependency ratio of people under 16 and of those of pensionable age as compared to those between the ages, and what is generally referred to as a working age population. Yeah, but what, fucking hell, right, that's riveting information. But right, what we got? Scotland's population story. So they've got a whole fucking segment presumably going to tell us all about the history of Scotland's demography. Well, that's really irrelevant. For the time being, it's relatively irrelevant. But let's see here. I'm not 1850. Yeah, so the lowest since records began. That's in and of itself another major red flag. That okay, apart from the odd headline here and there, not really a common talking point, is it? You know, that should be terrifying for many people, I would have thought. But it's like heads are buried in the sand. And as for the people in Parliament, they might as well have kippas on the top of their head, because that's a perfect excuse to rub those hands, because that is the perfect justification to scream to the rooftops about an open door migration policy. Record low birth rates, well, there's no coming back from that, so we might as well import half of Senegal. Am I right? Since 2000, the population has grown again to the record high, but as figure 2 has shown, this has not been the result of the natural change, so the number of births outstripping the number of deaths. Instead, population growth over the last 2 decades has been driven by Scotland shifting from being a country of net outward migration to one of sustained net inward migration, and of course, with the help of, EU immigration, yeah. Family friendly, let's get to it. Another fucking BAME again, come on. I mean, it's all in the symbolism, is it not? It's all in the symbolism. Ultimately, Scotland's population story is a multi-dimensional, bringing together a long history of growth and decline, migration, changing age, structural trends, and shifting local populations. And despite all that, Scotland still survives today at present, with some large percentage of the population in the country at present being of Scottish stock. So, populations fluctuate. It's not written in stone, so to speak, that things can't be changed, or at the very least slowed down. But the way things are going, And the longer that it's left with no conversation, no attempts to change anything, the worse it will get. And then that's when eyebrows obviously start to raise and question marks start to appear over people in power. They know more than we know, Well, they're supposed to anyway, They have information that we're not privy to. What the fuck's going on? Here we go. Families in Scotland are diverse and come in all shapes and sizes, apparently. And we celebrate that, and it must continue. In looking at our demographics, in order to support our increasing older population, we need to increase the number of our younger population. Migration is one route, but this relies on powers from the UK government. But the other is to identify and address the barriers that stop people from growing their families. It also helps sustain our public services, such as schools. This chapter looks at the context between our falling birth rate and what actions we are taking that can address this. Well, as previously mentioned, stop talking about feminism. But then this in and of itself, you run into a slight problem that I've thought about before myself. The more diverse the population becomes, even if it's just 5 or 6% BAME, for argument's sake, you run the risk of, running into legal trouble, I would have thought, if you start offering incentives to natives or, the indigenous Scots, for example, to have more babies, but you deliberately do not offer the same incentives to the blacks or the BAMEs. You also run into another risk as the population becomes more diverse, because if you offer incentives as a whole, they might not be taken up by the very group of people that you hope they'll be taken up by, but the BAMEs might, thus increasing the BAME baby population. So then you're in even more trouble then. So ideally you want to keep the number of non-natives as low as possible. Don't let up many, and I know that ship sailed long ago, but you do run into issues, or I believe you will in time. Yes, ideally, if I was in charge, I'd probably like to think I'd be as ruthless as it fucking gets, but I'm not. And again, to some extent, you kind of have to go with what you got. So Scotland's total fertility rate, the average number of children per woman that a group we have, I know what it is. What is it though? It has fallen from 2.5 in 1971 to a record low of 1.37 in 2019. In order for our population to grow, the replacement fertility rate needs to be at 2.1. Scotland's fertility rate has not been at 2.1 since 1973. Fucking hell, man. So for quite some time though, this has been obvious, and projections would have shown this to be the case. Or, where were the demographers back then to tell everybody that if things don't change then there would be a problem now? It's almost like they come out to tell you when it's too late already. Or they want you to believe that to be the case anyway. There is a variation in fertility rates across Scottish council areas. 5 council areas with the lowest fertility rates are all cities: Stirling, Dundee, Aberdeen, Glasgow and Edinburgh. Rural and remote areas and community areas tend to have a higher fertility rate. Shetland, Argyll and Bute, Scottish Borders, Midlothian and East Dunbartonshire all have higher rate than the England and Wales' average. Jesus. Those cities generally have low fertility rates internationally, primarily due to younger age profiles and higher concentrations of students. The rates in Scottish cities are substantially lower than cities in England and Wales with comparable age student profiles. Right, okay. So that's a bit worrying though about the fucking birth rate thing. But Scotland isn't alone in this. The rest of the UK and all EU countries also have a total fertility rate lower than the replacement fertility rate, although Scotland has the lowest rate across the entirety of the UK. Deciding to have a child is an important decision and is a decision for that individual or couple. It is not for government to seek to dictate or influence whether an individual should have a child or how many children they should choose to have. However, there is a role for government in addressing the barriers that may prevent individuals and couples from starting a family. But the point is though, not that I know all there is to know on the subject, but so many people grow up without even giving the idea of starting a family one day a second thought. It's just not something that they care about or consider. And a large part of that obviously is just the changes in society, the complete and utter breakdown of what once made society sort of cohesive. Traditionalism is dying a death. It's modernity, as they call it. And of course your feminist pish to top it all off, I would argue. But a good point that Sargon once made, it sounded relatively brutal, but he's got a point. It's an obligation. You could see it as an obligation to have a child or children. Your obligation to ensure that this country sustains itself when you're no longer here. So if you don't have children, you're not doing your duty. That's the argument that he made. And he does have a point to some extent, you know. But we've got to such a point now where, you know, abortion's rife for all, really. And less women want to have children. It's their choice after all. They'd rather pursue a career, you know, chasing their dreams, the empowerment, living the life, etc. That doesn't say very much for the dudes either, you know. But there just seems to be less and less of us that want to settle the fuck down. And the thing is, I wasn't even raised like that. I wasn't raised by my mother to want, you know, 1 year olds or you must settle down. I just always said I've wanted. That is something that's becoming rare. I don't know. I would say that you have to tackle that issue in the education setting, for starters. And that doesn't require brainwashing. I'm just simply saying that you should not have to completely disregard the concept of motherhood, etc. You should celebrate that. You should encourage that. You should, at the very least, promote the concept. If you're a teacher, that is, you know. There's nothing wrong with it. Promote it. Something to aspire to be in your later life. Nothing wrong with it. But the fucking opposite seems to be the case these days, man. Anyway. Fucking hell, man. Constant time again of these videos, man. I don't know what the hell's happening. There's no way to condense the entirety of this down into a small video, but I mean, it doesn't help where I see something that sets me off and I start fucking rambling. But there are a number of factors that influence people's decisions to start or expand their family. Some of these include financial. For example, families may not have the economic sustainability to pay for children or their ability to access well-paid flexible employment. Housing, depending where families live, they may not have adequate housing to raise a family. Personal, couples or individuals may choose to wait longer to have children. A wider societal as well as health reasons which can lead to fertility issues. People may also choose not to have children because of a range of cultural, etc, etc. The CUF, fuck the CUF. What else have we got? Fuck me. We want to encourage families and people of working age to come to Scotland and build their lives here, to make a positive contribution to our economy, our communities and our public services. For them and those already in Scotland, our focus is on identifying and addressing the barriers which may prevent people from taking the decisions to start or expand their family. Wait, for them and those already in Scotland. Fuck them, no offence to them. What about the Scottish people? You know, I don't see them being referenced once in this. That to me, the entirety of that paragraph just sounds like you're talking about the immigrants that are already here. Oh, wow. I'm starting to get annoyed here, like, hey, 42 minutes, fuck's sake. Our aspiration is that all families are supported to give their children the best start in life so that Scotland's children grow up loved, safe and respected and that they realise their full potential. And then they mention the getting it right for every child thing. Oh, fucking Jesus Christ. Fuck. Scotland's national approach to improving outcomes for children and young people, yeah, that's great. And then you started to brainwashing them with climate change and all things United Nations, so that's a bit of a Blackpool, isn't it? But it depends which side of the political aisle you're on, I guess. Scotland has a clear commitment to early intervention and prevention, and by offering children and family support at the right time, it will give parents the chance to thrive and mitigate the impact of socio-economic factors, supporting them to fully function in society. Commitment is best realised through proper holistic support for families. Okay. Don't really know what they're referring to here. Something called the promise. Don't know what that is. Oh, fuck knows. Right. Offering support to children, young people, and families is one way of demonstrating that Scotland is a great place to raise a family. However, one of the barriers women face is concern about the impact of parenthood on their job. Yeah, there's feminism again for you folks. Employment law, including the provision of parental leave and pay, is a matter reserved to the government in the UK, which means Scotland is currently limited. Therefore, like the rest of the UK, Scotland has maternity leave for eligible employees to take either for 26 weeks or ordinary maternity leave. And there's nothing wrong with that, realistically. Well, I'm aware off anyway. Maybe there's arguments for and against, I don't know. To build a family nation, we are providing a box of essential items to be expected to all expectant mothers with our baby boxes. I mean, the baby box thing really is not a fucking a bestseller in terms of incentivization. Committed to funding more early learning and childcare hours for all parents for those aged 3 to 4. Committed to the getting it right for every child as an overarching rights-based policy approach. working with local authorities, care providers and all relevant stakeholders to make the necessary changes to the care system, committed to free education for all children and continue to offer no tuition fees to Scottish people, committed to providing universal and targeted health services to support the health and development of all children, developing the Family Support Directory, which allows users to access information, provide support through the Scottish Child Payment, which launched on February 2021, which pays the equivalent of a tenner a week to eligible claimants with a child under 6. A tenner a week, come on the fuck. I mean, I know a tenner is better than nothing for some, but I mean, it's nothing to scream about, is it? Providing holistic support to help parents progress towards and within work. Delivering on the commitments in our Fair Work Action Plan, aiming for Scotland to be a fair work nation. Promoting payment of the real living wage through the real living wage employment accreditation. Support women back into the labour market following a career break. Launching the Workplace Equality Fund. More person-centred approach to employability for all. What's any of this shit got to do with increasing our fucking birth rate? Fuck's sake. Oh, wow. You know, time's ticking away here. What more needs to be done? Well, maybe start talking about ways to incentivise native births. That might be a good start, eh? Deciding whether or not to have children is rightly a matter for individuals. Yeah, we gathered that, you know. I think the time might have passed for that sort of wishy-washy talk, you know. This is now starting to get to the point. A number of countries across the world are considering the impact of a declining birth rate. Some countries have put in place incentives to encourage people to have children, while other countries have focused on addressing the potential barriers that may discourage people from having children. For example, some countries that offer more generous parental leave packages, such as Sweden, offers 480 days of gender-blind parental leave, 80% of salary, have a higher total fertility rate in Scotland. That is not to say that policy interventions are the reason behind the fertility rate, but it does suggest more investigation into family-friendly policy and the impact on fertility. And have these investigations come to light? Have they concluded? Well, I've not heard a damn thing, but I can't say for certain because, as I said, I haven't even heard of this until tonight. But these are the sort of things that you would have thought they would have looked into a long time ago if they were really invested in trying to rectify the problem with a declining birth rate. But, nah, silence as per usual. It's easier to just rely on projections that will solve all your problems come the day that the powers are devolved, eh? We must continue to promote Scotland as a fairer country, not just for our children with our aim to reduce child poverty, but also by empowering women to return to the workplace. We need to ensure that workplaces are fair and give women the same opportunities to pursue a worthwhile career. Okay, that's great. That's fucking great. Similarly, we must continue to encourage broader participation of women in business and entrepreneurship. Yeah, that'll really get the birth rates up. Let's just continue it down that train of thought. Aye. Fucking wow. The government supports a gender-balanced use of employee benefit and family-related leave. However, we do not have the powers required. That's lovely. Actions to increase the level and length of statutory provision would provide financial support to families through the maternity leave period, supporting parents and children to get the best start in life and not feeling the imperative to return to work due to a low income level. This would help address the motherhood penalty, a key driver to the gender pay gap, and will respond to 2015 research by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, whose findings on pregnancy and maternity discrimination revealed that 77% of women reported a negative or discriminatory pregnancy and or maternity experience. Okay, another paragraph that I really didn't have to read aloud. Fuck's sake. Oh, there's one positive that I've seen so far. I mean, I've decided to go over the text version because I thought it might be condensed somewhat. Doesn't appear to be, but something caught my eye here. Increasing access to NHS treatment for the purpose of increasing population could be achieved by widening access criteria to NHS fertility treatment, for example, to include single people or couples who already have a child, or by increasing the number of cycles of IVF to increase success rates. Further modelling would need to be undertaken to inform the demand and possible outcome of these changes, and insight work to be carried out to understand if that is one of the reasons behind people not having children. I can't answer whether or not that's why people ain't having kids, but there's no harm in trying, because that's what I've been saying. Like, every single thing that you think, not these people, I mean in general, every single possibility should be considered. Absolutely every single fucking one, apart from the ones that would be focusing on encouraging people here. That comes after the fact, if you're that hell-bent on it. You know? Breastfeeding, well, whatever. We must ensure people are getting the work-life balance that they want and perhaps need to raise a family. A study by Family Friendly Work in Scotland found that 95% of Scottish people believe a work-life balance is as important as their salary. 1/3 believe this balance is important, more important than their salary. A UK level flexible working expert Timewise found that at the start of 2020, 9 out of 10 people wanted to work flexibly, even with the onset of the CUF and the rise in working from home. Only 22% of jobs advertised as flexible in Scotland. Oh, God's sake, man. Keep reading paragraphs thinking it'll conclude in something, but nah, it never does it? We recognise the importance of enabling all children in Scotland to have access to high quality and affordable childcare which meets their needs and the needs of their families and communities. So they want to improve outcomes for children, provide opportunities for parents and carers to access work and study, and improving family well-being. Now that middle bullet point there, I mean, is this just a means of, do you sell that to people abroad to get them to come here? Or is this for Scottish mothers and fathers? I don't know. This is why in Scotland we are in the process of almost doubling the number of hours of early learning and childcare for our children to access, and we've committed to developing a strategic framework for school-aged children, or childcare support by a 3 million access to childcare fund to test new models of school-age childcare that will be accessible and affordable for low-income families. Okay, well, I can't really, berate that if that ever comes into fruition. I don't know if it has or not. A lack of access to high-quality and affordable childcare is a barrier to encouraging young families to move to an area. We understand this can be a key challenge in rural and island areas which tend to have higher proportions of people who have a second job, who are self-employed, blah, 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 blah. But the issue, I know that an issue in Scotland, a secondary issue, if you ask me, is that certain areas of Scotland don't have as many in terms of population as others, but the overarching issue in and of itself is the decline overall of us as a people. So stop fucking wasting time with paragraphs such as that. I don't know what I was expecting, as I said, when I was reading through this. I'm just very, very conscious of the time now. Fucking almost an hour long. Jesus Christ. The evidence highlights a number of important actions for the private renters. What? I don't give a fuck about it. Why is that even in here? While it's important to have these family-friendly policies in place, it is equally important that people are made aware and understand the support which will be available to individuals, couples, or families when they make that decision to have a child. Okay. And then they've got this shit. I mean, they're all for doing what they can to encourage and entice people over here, but God forbid they try to encourage or entice people to actually procreate, That seems to be taboo. But the Blue Peter style, here's one we made earlier, that's fine. Attracting people to move to Scotland is important in addressing our demographic challenges. In doing so, we can hope to address our challenges twofold by encouraging more working age people to live here to help support our ageing population and increase the number of children and young people if they choose to raise a family here as well. But the problem is that we're not raising children because we're not having them. Therefore, if this came into effect and the people that you're speaking of move to Scotland, they have children on your behalf. This is called replacement migration, I know I'm preaching to the choir to anybody that's made it this far into this video, but it's fucking the government, the first time I've ever seen them conjure up a document to discuss this issue and the opportunities and the challenges that Scotland faces in the future. And they just constantly bring up feminist talking points scattered around this document, and replacement migration keeps popping up. Where is the concerns expressed over us as a people? Where's the acknowledgement that us as a people exist? Where's the policies that they have thought about, considered, and a plan to discuss to see if they'll work to incentivise native birth? There's nothing at all. But don't worry about it, folks, because apparently we're a vibrant country. And it's important that we publicise it. We have beautiful green open space for families to explore. We have amazing cultural heritage, from book festivals in the south to our Nordic heritage in the north. Our Nordic heritage, you mean in the islands, for fuck's sake? Come on, the hell. We're not all Nordic up here, come on. But I know what you mean. Work has already been delivered through the collaborative Brand Scotland strategic partnership with a range of marketing campaigns under the current international audience umbrella strategy. Scotland is it now. I'm sorry, from what I recall of that campaign, it was pretty damn fucking cancerous. Was that not the same as the one Scotland, many cultures narrative? They ran with that for some time, and I'm pretty sure they came out with that to try and deflect from the sort of anti-racist, the anti-immigration sentiment that was coming out after Thin Lips kept banging on about it. I could be wrong, time scale wise. I could be thinking of something different, but I do recall something like that happening. we will share our family-friendly policies with investors we engage with through our inward investment plan, as this may well be a deciding factor in which businesses decide to invest here. We will continue to use the Brand Scotland umbrella strategy to develop and deploy campaigns over the coming months and years to help achieve our population ambitions. Our population ambitions? And what are they? Oh, wow. So they've got their, I think I read some of this earlier on, the first fucking point that they bring up for their summary of actions is a feminist one. Priorities and all that, yeah. Jesus. Increasing healthy life expectancy and driving innovation in an aging society. Well, I'm not going to read that. I tracked it. Oh, look at this shit, man. Look at this nonsense. Attracting and welcoming people to Scotland. So this is, we've got a whole section dedicated to getting people to come here. Oh, fuck's sake, like, this is the problem. They spend too much time assuming this is a get-out clause. This is the problem. Oh, wow. People who move between Scotland and the rest of the UK tend to be relatively young with relatively higher level education. That's great. I really don't care. They could be as smart as they come. They could be as dumb as rocks. The problem is they're not Scottish, and if you want them here to procreate on behalf of us, that's a fucking problem. It fucking is. Come on, man. Right, let's try and see if I can boost through this a bit. Sorry, it's migration in the economy. Overseas migration to Scotland rose markedly in the 2000s following EU enlargement. Since then, since the 2009 to 2010, the figure has fluctuated, but net overseas migration to Scotland has remained consistently positive in every year since 2003/2004. The overseas migration profile to Scotland is similar to that of migration within the UK. Most people who come to Scotland from abroad are working age. In the year mid-2019, 32,000 of overseas migrants to Scotland were under 35 compared to 41% of Scotland's general population. Around 2/3 of overseas migrants to Scotland have a degree compared to around 1/3 of Scotland's general population. Oh, well, that's good then. So that's a fucking what? That's great if you're concerned about contributions in GDP, but I don't care about any of that shit. I'm past the point of caring about that. Migration can help alleviate some of the challenges associated with the demographic change. Without migration, the population would be in decline, with deaths exceeding births. The whole point of this document, you would have thought in theory, was ways to try and ensure that the deaths did not exceed births. But I've seen very little in the way of encouragement regarding birth rates. Very little at all. Migrants who come to Scotland tend to be well educated and highly skilled, helping to raise productivity and contribute to government revenue. Let's just keep importing them then. There is also evidence to suggest that migration can specifically help alleviate issues related to skill shortages in the labour market. I don't give a fuck. Jesus Christ, what is this document becoming? I'm starting to just lose my patience because I'm almost an hour in to this shit, reading it in real time, and it's just now starting to become a pro-migration document by the looks of it. Scotland's seasonal industries are particularly reliant on migration. Ah, yes, we need the fruit pickers. I remember, Ben McPherson on the radio talking all about it. The videos on my channel. Population is projected to grow by 2.5% between 2018 and 2043. All of this growth is projected to come from migration, as there are projected to be more deaths than births in Scotland every year moving forward. However, this projection is not a forecast. It assumes that migration flows will stay broadly consistent with average levels over recent decades. Future migration flows are difficult to predict. Since 2010, immigrants to Scotland from overseas in particular has fluctuated significantly. Moreover, though, EU exit and the CUF both represent significant sources of uncertainty about future overseas migration to Scotland. And the only one tiny little positive that I've seen come out of anything CUF related is that in 2021, for the first time in a long time, slightly, not much to write home about, but Scotland's birth rate, actually increased. How much of that was Scots and how much of that was, let's say, Asians, I don't know, but still positive. Slight white pill, if you will. So what else we got? EU exit, fuck off. You can't really blame that, can you, though? Because for how long were you in the EU and you still had these issues? You know, you should stop focusing so much on the immigration side of things and instead try the could off all the years, all the decades prior, as mentioned way back earlier in this video, where they said that this was known decades ago. Where was the effort then to try and change things? There was never a conscious effort made. You know, they focused constantly on immigration because that was a cop-out and easy fix to their fucking problem. And that is a fundamentally just fucking callous, for lack of a better term. You know, it just means that we are rendered nothing but replaceable. You know, expendable. What else have we got? I'm really conscious of the time. Fuck off, EU immigrants. So it goes on, obviously, about COVID. Ambition is for the country to be welcoming and open, with a long history of welcoming people of all nationalities. We want people from across the UK, across the world, to make Scotland their home. Fucking, oh my god. Yeah, you know, we got declining birth rates, you know, jeopardy of becoming a people of the past, and here we have the government saying that's fine because, you know, we want people from all over the world to come. Why do some people want that to be the case? Well, I know why they want it to be the case, because their national performance framework probably dictates them to say such shit. But the reality of the matter is, if they had their way, there would be people from all over the world here having babies on our behalf, probably living at high in the hog, and the benefit system for some anyway, you know. But you'd see a hell of a lot more babes running around, whereas we would be dying out. We're dying out anyway, slowly, but they're not fucking helping. Migration enriches our society and culture, and migrants make a net contribution to our economy. And I'm sick of them talking about net contributions as if that's supposed to somehow... So, oh, well, that's alright then. Again, what relevancy does the enrichment of our society and culture and net contributions have to encouraging our native population to start procreating? There is no relevancy. It bears no relevancy at all, whatsoever. They're also apparently essential to addressing our demographic challenges. But again, as I said, like, I don't know if I said this at the start of the video. I might have done. I want them to define. I'd love for them to define in this what demographics means, because sure as fuck doesn't sound like it's on racial lines to me at all, or ethnic lines, whatever you will. Oh, fuck's sake. I love the way that they finish off this paragraph. Really just summarises the way that they view us. No different to anybody else, which is a fucking problem. Which is the problem. You see, it says here that it is vital that we grow our working age population to ensure that Scotland has sustainable, vibrant, and resilient communities now and into the future. You know, in a paragraph talking about migration and how it helps our demographic challenges. So, the only concern here is, and the only thing that needs to be achieved, the only target that needs to be achieved is that there is people here in order for it to be deemed sustainable. It doesn't matter who's here. There just needs to be a working age population. They could be from China, they could be from Japan, they could be from Zimbabwe, Jamaica. It does not matter, as long as there is people here that could be considered a working age population. If that is the fucking primary concern for the people that conjured up this fucking document, then there's no wonder that there's not a national conversation on demographics. There's not a national conversation on the future of us as a people. It's a fucking joke. What a fucking joke. So without direct powers over immigration policy, the government's current work in these areas focuses on welcoming and supporting those who choose to make Scotland their home. And that includes the asylum seekers as well. You know, they're bending over backwards to get as many as them here, because that to them is their migration. You know, they don't have control over immigration, but if the asylum seekers want to come here, oh, the more the fucking merrier, eh? Support businesses to attract and retain international talent in Scotland, and support universities to attract international students and staff. So they've got a few ways of trying to entice people over here. But again, why not turn some of that attention onto the natives and see what you could do there? You know, no harm in trying. Unless, of course, the whole point is that you don't want them to try. That's what it looks like. Oh, fuck's sake. It's just, you know. We're developing a new talent attraction and retention service for Scotland, bringing together hubs across Scotland, offering information and advice to support migrants before and after arriving in Scotland. Before arriving in Scotland, you say, yeah? course. New Scots refugee integration strategy, supporting all local authorities to support and integrate refugees. Yeah. Oh, wow. We will support the delivery of the Skills Recognition Scotland and overseas skills recognition framework to help employers recruit qualified migrant workers, including in priority sectors such as health and social care. We are working closely with universities and colleges to ensure our message that Scotland remains a safe, secure and welcoming destination is reaching international audiences. I'll bet it fucking is. And that's what it's all about here in Rainbow Unicorn Land. You know, my opinion of this document. As I said, didn't have high hopes for it, but now I'm viewing it with fucking contempt. Really, it was nice. It was just a bit positive to see for once that they were actually acknowledging that there was issues, but that didn't last long as they swiftly moved on to the drooling at the prospect of having African men and brown women here. We will continue to develop policy proposals drawing on international evidence from Canada, Australia and elsewhere. The differentiated migration policy can provide effective solutions to distinct demographic needs. I need a drink, as well as working with partners to present clear evidence of the needs of Scottish employers, services and communities to the UK Migration Advisory Committee. Okay. The government will continue to develop the evidence base and to work with partners to develop practical, deliverable and evidence-based proposals which meet Scotland's needs. Yeah, Scotland's needs. When you say Scotland's needs, what are they talking about? Are we talking about the country, the nation, the borders, the line that separates Scotland from England? Are we talking about that? The geography? Or are we talking about the people that make Scotland Scotland? The Scots, the native Scots that seem to be completely ignored throughout the entirety of this fucking document? Because our needs don't seem to be met here. Because I don't think it's a good thing for us to just have our government doing everything they can to encourage as many brown and blacks over here to have children that we ain't having. Without even attempting to try and encourage us to have children first and foremost, priorities and all that. Learning from international examples, and obviously they do mention European countries, but if they're all facing the same problems themselves, then I really don't see how you can be fully encouraged to believe that you can just pluck their talent, So it goes on to talk about the UK government's advisory committee or whatever, and I'm just not. Oh, the Scottish visa, I remember this. I remember that being talked about. I didn't go down too well in the media, I remember. The Expert Advisory Group report has now been published and it identified 3 possible models for a rural pilot. Right? And this was, this paragraph might... The Scottish Government has offered to work with the UK to design and develop solutions on the UK migration system, including rural pilots, on the basis that the Scottish Government commissioned the Expert Advisory Group on Migration and Population to consider what a pilot approach to migration in rural areas would need to achieve in order to benefit Scotland's rural and island communities. So they had the expanding skilled worker route involving relaxing conditions for the skilled worker route in the UK immigration system, specifically for employers in the designated areas, potentially through a bespoke shortage occupation list for remote and rural areas. The Scottish visa, of course, this would build on their government's proposal for a Scottish visa set out in January's 2020 migration paper, but aimed specifically at designated areas instead of entrants being identified by employers. It would involve a points-based system which could prioritise targeted characteristics and remote and rural partnership scheme modelled on the Canadian pilot scheme. This would be an employment-based scheme, but as part of a wider partnership between local authorities, employers, public services. It's irrelevant because, again, this has got fuck all to do with incentivising native births at all. No, not a peep. No, this is all about migration. It's good to see how far this document seems to have fallen. In February, the government set out 5 areas where the UK government should revise the migration policy: end migration net target, end the migration skills charge, give the government a greater say in the Scotland shortage occupation list, extend and protect rights and family migration. Yeah, fucking, it's all they care about. I've said it for years. Oh, building on Scotland's capacity. Oh, fuck off. To attract and retain people from the UK and overseas. Overseas being the operative word, of course. Recognising the importance of global alumni in helping to attract and retain talent, and consider initiatives to mobilise these networks to promote Scotland as a place to live, work and study. I don't want you to promote Scotland as a place to work, live and study. Because the more that promotion takes place, and the more that come here to work, live and study on behalf, or not as a result of the promotion that's taking place via these networks, etc., the more the population is diluted, and the more the the scales, the balance begins to shift, begins to tip, and slowly but surely, at some point, there will reach a point in time where it will be done, irreversible, forevermore. It might not show itself for a couple of generations before the kids of those generations are born and whatnot, but it will show itself. Play my fucking fire, like, that's what's happening. But they're always moaning about the fact it's reserved. It's just a fucking joke. Too big a paragraph to read through all this. I really need to finish it. But then you got migration actions. Look at all the migration summary of actions. We will continue to press for vital reforms in the immigration system. Continue to consider options to attract international students to Scotland. Continue to develop an evidence-based case for a tailored Scottish approach to migration. That's all they fucking care about. We still talk about that in 2022, 2021. That's all they talk about. Ensuring our population is more balanced and distributed across Scotland so all our communities can flourish. There's no point in me even reading it, because what does that entail? What that entails is our population. What they mean by that is everybody that's here, that's of working age, etc. I don't give a fuck where you put the Senegalese and the Congolese people and whatnot, the Sudanese. They shouldn't be here if the whole purpose of them being here is to have children on our behalf. Fuck them. Fuck them. Oh, wow. There's no point in me going any further. To conclude, this is just a fucking joke. An absolute fucking joke of a bill. Yeah. But, as I said at the start of the video, I do think that a national conversation, nothing to do with a government, nothing like that. I'm not asking for people to start meshing their local MSP or MP and start asking if we can have some sort of conversation with them. No, fuck them. I'm talking about us as a people, The people, that's all we've really got at this point. And if we don't have that, then what the fuck have we got? Then might as well just accept defeat, I just think that maybe it's a long shot, but, over time, over the course of a period of time, conversation from mouth to mouth, person to person, and over time, potentially, enough people will be aware of what we are facing. Because things as they currently stand, well, there's a reason I'm black pilled. I'll say no more. Peace.